I'm your man, Rod Love, and hey, we have a show for you today. You talking about bringing in the big wigs? I got the big wigs in the studio tonight. Hey, let me do this. We often talk about responsible fatherhood. Today, you're going to actually get a chance to hear and feel what that actually looks like. So I have in the studio with us this evening, and I tell you, I don't even know how to frame up this welcome, this introduction. And Doc and I, we go way back. So I'm going to start right here. And man, I want to introduce, and I can't even introduce them individually, y'all, because it's a team.
The duo,
Hey,
dynamic duo.
I want to introduce the Graymar team of Mr. Kenny Smith and Grace. And you know what? I had to ask that question. I say, oh man, what? Grace Mar?
Yes.
So you got to give a, hey y'all, let's give applause to Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Graymar.
Grace
Hey,
Mark, yes.
Grace Mar, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
that's okay.
So when we go there, I got to go ahead and plug my good friend of all of 30 years. Probably only one of the people that knew me when I had hair.
And I had that.
Dr. Randy Nelson of 21st Century Research and Evaluation. Most of you are familiar with Dr. Nelson as he travels around the country. He works with law enforcement, communities as it relates to community engagement. Dr. Nelson, once again, thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be back.
Hey, so as we jump into this, when we talk about responsible fatherhood, tell me, what does that look like?
I'll yield to the young lady unless you want me to jump in.
Well, for me, being a responsible father simply means being present, right? And what that looks like to each family, to the child, is going to be very different. But I think if the father can allow himself to be present in the child's life, then it creates conversation, it builds up rapport and relationship, and from there, you can take it anywhere.
Take it anywhere. So, Ken, what is that? I know you got it from the First Lady, but each of us have that feel and touch of what we believe responsible fatherhood is. And you better not go in another direction because you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go in that direction. Absolutely not. I know who to my left.
Thank you for letting me know.
I know who to my left. But we do look at things in kind of a little different lens, and I'm more of a kind of statistical guy.
Okay.
And I understand what the absence of fathers means in our communities specifically. And so for me, I need it's that father being present in the community. So I look at it as a community. The real small statistic. They say that if you have 5% role models in the community can thrive. So we only need 5%. And those usually are the fathers that are absent for whatever reason. And so for me, it's really fatherhood is being able to be there for the community. Because I don't think it's just one family. I think our fathers are our communities. So
that's very interesting. But you know, I'm gonna take away something that I've heard for like 27 years. This intro where this individual says, I'm just an old country boy from Wakulla County. Hey, country boy with a PhD.
Still the truth.
But Doc, what does that mean to you?
Mine is a combination of both. I think Grace saying a father's present. I think that's the first step. But I also think back in my community that there are other men other than my dad that also, I think, influenced me and set an example for me. So I think it's both. It's the presence and then the impact of that presence.
Absolutely.
Because there are gentlemen that were in my community that to this day I still remember, and having a positive presence on my life. So I think of fatherhood in totality. Not only my father, who reared me, and to this day the lesson, but also it was a broader family, a community father. That isn't as present today as it was when I was growing up.
But you know, each of you said something. I mean, when you talk about being present, that means giving up your time and commitment. But then, you know, the other part of it is when we talk about the faith community. And here's where it tags off into one of our good friends continues to tell me. Father doesn't necessarily have to be that biological aspect.
Absolutely.
It could actually be that father figure. And so that, you know, so how do we engage at the level, and I hate to say this, but how do we make this popular and I don't want to use the word again because that would imply that we've lost track of what it's all about. But
We
for the
have.
mere virtue of Governor DeSantis putting $70 million into the state budget to focus on responsible fatherhood, that to me says we got a problem.
Absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
So how do we get our arms around it?
Well, if again, I'm a statistic guy. If you look at a lot of things that plague our community, it's because we have absentee fathers. And kudos to Governor DeSantis for putting this money around this program. We can cure a lot of social ills that we have if we can just do what we all articulate: install men back into their communities. Right? We can eradicate poverty, teen pregnancy, childhood suicide, youth incarceration. All those things tied directly to absentee fathers.
I gotta commend you for just being straightforward and articulating that, because now you see people beating around the bush about the fact that men need to be present.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. They have to be there. They
Yeah.
have to. I don't want to hog, but I'm gonna get one quick.
No.
You know, and we're in a political. We're going through the political season now.
All right.
But there's two organizations. There's one, the Heritage Foundation, and you got the Brookings Foundations. That's the Democrats and the Republicans. They all
Correct.
say the same thing. Three things. If you want to avoid poverty in your adult life, you got to do three things: graduate high school, don't have children out of wedlock, and get a full-time job. 70% of teen pregnancy, 70% of high school
Yep.
dropouts come from what? Fatherless households.
You're right.
Absolutely.
You're right.
Absolutely.
Right. So I mean, that, and the job piece is a totally separate thing. But two of the three can be addressed simply by putting fathers back in the household
No, you're right.
and men back in the communities.
And, you know, we're having this conversation, and Ms. Smith, I appreciate you being here, because I have to tell you, I'm a product of a single parent. My mother is she is still, I was going to say she was,
Right.
the enforcer. Randy's met my mom. Randy's met my mom. But you know, in part it's because my father was absent,
Yeah.
and my mother continued to be the enforcer. But I will say this, and I say this respectfully. My mom raised 4 sons with compassion, love, and all of those things.
Yeah.
What me and my brothers did miss is being boys raised to become men by a man. That was absent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So from your perspective, sitting here,
Yeah.
I think we need all vantage points.
Yeah.
But as a woman, what would you say to fathers, as well as women,
Yeah.
to help support and encourage fathers being responsible and engaged and spending time with their obligations?
Well, I would first start with the women, because I think sometimes women play a role in how much the fathers are in the kids' lives, because they're having problems with the partner. Then they kind of spill those feelings over on the child. So now putting the child in the middle of a disagreement that is between two adults.
Yeah.
So I think as women, you know, understand that, accepting that that relationship is over, and now I have to do what's in the best interest of the child. And if that means allowing the father to come in, allowing the father to come pick up the son, spend time with them, not talking badly about the father, I think that can help. Because, I mean, let's face it, people are going to get divorced sometimes. It
Right.
happens, right? But can we coexist outside of that? Of course we can. But we have to be mature adults. I, too, came from a single-parent household. My father was murdered. And growing up, my mom raising 2 girls, I felt the absence of a father, right? Because for me, it was now, how do I relate to men, right? I didn't know what that love felt like. I knew my mom and my grandmother gave us everything that they possibly could. But going outside of that, I didn't know what it was like to have a father's love, you know? So I think parenting is 2 parents for a reason,
Right.
right? And I think those 2 parents have to be adults, learn to work together to raise their child.
You know, I love it, what you just said. Here's the hard part.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say to our audience, the Florida Economic Consortium is launching a responsible fatherhood initiative in Orange and Seminole County. Grace Mar, we are blessed to have Grace Mar be one of the practicing consultants with your own curriculum, I might add.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
In that curriculum, I was impressed when I saw, it's extensive, y'all, but it has ACE in it. It
Yeah.
deals with mental health.
Yeah.
Dr. Nelson, what's some of the things I missed?
Man, it was everything in there. Everything that it takes to be a present and effective father was in there. Because fatherhood is real dynamic.
Yeah.
There's no one thing.
Yeah.
And to piggyback on Kendra, what I like about Kendra, we're stat people. We talk about stat. So back in the day when Rod was the deputy secretary at Department of Juvenile Justice, they hired me to go around all 26 detention centers in the state of Florida. And I was going in and having frank conversations with young black males in particular. But it was everybody that was in the detention center. So I'm from Pensacola to Key West. There were 26. How many do you think had more black males, of the 26, how many do you think had more black males than any other population of the 26? How many would you say? You had to give a number. Had more
Give
black
it-
males.
How many?
Out of the 26, how many do you think had more black males than any other population in the facility of the 26?
Maybe 10.
10? What would you say?
Well, I'm gonna say all 26.
Well, you were closer. 25 out of the 26 had more black males
Wow.
than any other population.
Wow.
The only one that didn't was Key West, Florida. Key West was the only one. And while that work was very, very important, I think it was God's work.
Yeah.
But I would leave out of there emotionally drained every time.
Absolutely.
Because the conversation would all be, Dr. Nelson, I'm glad you're here. I mean,
Yeah.
what you're giving us, we need. And you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. But if you can't go home with me, I'm gonna be right back in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was just it was huge. So last month I went with Ernie Sims, and it was powerful, man. I'm not a you won't. It's hard to bring a tear out of me.
Yeah.
But I was in there, and this young man said, I like this conversation. He just started crying. He said, I've only seen my dad once. I've only seen my dad once. He lives not even 2 miles from me. Am I that bad that a black man can't love me? Well, all of it. It just pulled us.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's pulled us. He said, I can't talk to my daddy. My daddy knows where I am. And I was
But
like,
Dr. Nelson, you say this often. Brother Armando, turn this down a little bit if you would. Appreciate it. But you say this oftentimes. It's not hard work.
yeah,
It's hard work.
yeah.
Yeah.
And with that being hard work, what I got to come back to say and ask that question to you because, man, we could have this type of conversation all day long. When you talk about the dynamics of mothers and fathers, and the focus should be on the children.
Yeah.
How do we, and we're going to figure this out through
Yeah.
this initiative that we have going on in Orange and Seminole, but what are some of the steps that we must take to forge these bonds so that we can open up the communication between those mothers and fathers to focus on the child, but to focus on the fact that to this father,
Yeah.
your child
Yeah.
needs you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I think they have to learn to communicate, learn to talk. We have to set up opportunities for them to get to know each other again. You know, because again, when they split, they're splitting with, I can't stand him, I can't stand her, and they're refusing. Right, and so now it's all emotional, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
it's all emotional, and it's not about the child. So I
Right.
think we have to start with them building their relationship again, knowing that okay, we don't have to be together, but we created something special. How can we be together for him or her? What can we do, right? And I think a lot of times, let's talk about it, the courts get involved, and the courts play a role in keeping them apart.
Correct.
And sometimes it doesn't even have to go to court. Sometimes, again, it's just everybody, let's come to the table. Listen, I don't want to attack you. I don't want to hurt you, right? And once they feel safe now and they feel like I can now trust you, now we can start really building that relationship and making it more about the child. But I think the work has to be done with the adults first, within themselves.
You're absolutely correct. Let me ask this of the entire panel, and I want to break this thing down. Dr. Nelson, you've been working in Orange County regarding the Youth Violence Prevention Initiative. We've hosted forums dealing with human trafficking. We look at domestic violence situations. But let me ask you, in delinquency, child welfare,
Mm-hmm.
what do you believe the correlation is as it relates to the lack of responsible fatherhood and the correlation with the items I just mentioned? Could youth violence be prevented if there's a response? So I want to toss it to y'all. Dr. Ness, we'll start with you and come back.
It's the same way that I was telling you about in 25 out of 26 detention centers, there are more black males
Yeah.
than any other population. Uh, You go to the prison system, if you look at the same thing, and statistically, how many of them come from single parent household, predominantly female head household? Not to blame a mother,
Yeah.
Right, right.
but like, kind of like you said earlier, I always say it takes a rabbit to teach a rabbit how to be a rabbit.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're kind of like sometimes we do with the police. We expect the police to be all things to every. Sometimes we expect mothers to be all things.
Right.
I'm your mother. I'm your father. No, you're not my father. You're my mother.
Right.
So being able to do it, and I had a similar thing, kind of like you. My parents were divorced, so I stayed with my mother half the time, and then I just wanted to be my dad. I actually ran away from my mom. Moved to Tampa. I ran right back to the country. And the beautiful thing about this, and we'll talk about it though, my dad may have told me twice in his life that he loved me, out of his mouth. But every fiber, every being up until the day he died, and one of those times he was on the deathbed. But I never doubted his love. Not once ever doubted. But now with my sons, I'm more intentional. I tell them I love them.
Yeah.
And not that, like I said, that I didn't feel my dad love, but I think now in the society we're in now, I have to tell them, hey, I love you.
Yeah.
And it's okay for me to look you in your eye. With my dad's generation, they weren't that loving, but he showed me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He showed me. So I think that we have to be intentional about this in terms of fatherhood. And I'm still growing into it. I'm pretty sure there's some things now that my sons do different with their sons.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, 100% agree. I know of situations, let's talk about me personally. A father not being in home for me, how it affected me was, again, not knowing what love was from a man. And as a result, I didn't feel like I had someone to protect me. And as a result, I became a victim of molestation, right? And I've often said to myself, if my father was in the home, there's no way a predator would have came and attacked me, right?
me.
So I didn't have that protection. So, as I grew up as a young lady, I had to find, I had to work on me because of that absence
Absolutely.
of a father. I had to work on me and to become the woman that I want to be. So I truly believe that, like I said before, men and women play a role in their children's life.
Well,
You
right.
have a mother for a reason and you have a father for a reason. And I think they need to be intact in order for us to raise healthy children.
I agree.
They said it all, but, we need to be able to model for men and women what family looks like again. That's the thing. If you can't see it, you can't be it. We got to put those models back out there for people to see. Grace talked about the communication piece and the fighting and things. I hate to say this, that's learned behavior.
Yeah.
That is a lot of times what I've seen. This is how I deal with things.
Right.
How do we create, and what we talk about in our curriculum, a new experience? Because most often when people are training or trying to help people modify behavior, they try to go on a kind of the perception. But what we have to do, we have to create new experiences for people that are strong enough for them to actually influence their behavior. It's like, and something we'll talk about tomorrow. If you ever been driving a car and you get caught and the police pull you over, and you go through what you go through. But when you come to that spot where you got pulled over before, your behavior has changed.
You're right.
The experience was so
Absolutely.
strong that
Yep.
your behavior changed.
That's true.
That's what we
Yeah.
got to create new experiences for our people so that those experiences was like it affects my behavior.
And you're absolutely correct. But then the other part of it, and thank you for bringing me back to home base, because when I was having the conversation and I was talking about growing up as a boy,
Yeah.
needing that man to help raise
Right.
us. Randy has 2 boys.
Right, right.
Responsible fatherhood also pertains to those girls that you're raising.
God.
And
Right, that's
hey,
right.
for those of y'all that follow us, y'all know I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old, both girls that drive me crazy. And with that being the case, I had to learn some things with girls. I mean, my nephew used to come up summertime, discipline him,
Yeah.
nothing. I mean, we move on.
All right.
These
Yeah.
girls, you just look, I gotta keep my eye on them for a week. you know, it's something that they teach me, but you know, it's something that we have in common that I just absolutely love. When you two talk about empowerment, well, when you look at Florida Economic Consortium logo, at the bottom of the logo, it says community empowerment.
Yeah.
It's all about empowering. Dr. Nelson trains communities and law enforcement, but it's empowering them to learn about one another,
Absolutely.
put themselves in one another's shoes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Our biggest challenge, I think, though, as we, and Dr. Nelson, you gotta help me do this. We have to give a shout out to Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lima. When we introduced
My God.
that we were launching the Responsible Fatherhood Initiative, Sheriff Lima, he threw everything but the kitchen sink at this with his corrections, with probation. He's probably one of the most, well, he is one of the most innovative law enforcement executives in the country.
Forward thinking.
Yeah.
Forward thinking.
And so, Dr. Nelson, I mean, you got to talk about Sheriff.
No, it didn't surprise me because he's just forward thinking. He doesn't see crime as something static.
Yep.
He led the nation in terms of opioids issues. He led the nation in terms of engagement. How do we prevent this from happening in the first place? See, some law enforcement go, there's a crime, okay, let's go and make the arrest. How do I not have to come back to this?
Exactly.
Yes.
See,
Getting upstream.
yeah, absolutely. He's looking at how do I prevent this from happening first? And in order to do that, you have to be forward thinking.
Absolutely.
And Sheriff Lima, Sheriff Chitwood. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there are several that get this work. But the ones that think that I can just go and arrest, that makes the community safe. You make the community safer by preventing the crime.
There you
Absolutely.
go. Exactly.
You know, Ken, you got a better memory than me, and I'm gonna depend on Ms. Smith and Dr. Nelson to help with this. But people are gonna be asking the question: who's eligible for the services from the Florida Economic Consortium? We do know individuals that have child support orders are eligible. What are some of the other? Because it's about 7 or 8 criteria for eligibility.
Well, here's the thing. Anyone who's a father who wants our help
Yeah.
and lives in Orange and Seminole County
Correct.
can contact us. So we're going to serve you all, but we do have some target populations that we want to work with. And they're the individuals who are a little bit more challenged. I don't want to go through all of them.
Yeah,
If you want me
yeah.
to,
No,
I
that's
will.
good.
But we want to say everyone's welcome.
Everybody's welcome. You're right.
Because we need to stand all the fathers up, but you know, our SNAP and our TANF and our formerly incarcerated,
Yeah.
you know, those individuals are who are probably more in need.
Right.
Yeah.
But everyone who's a father who just wants to be engaged and get stood up by this group and others
And
should
we're,
come.
and we're looking at working with the courts. We're looking at working with child support, and as you mentioned, from
Law
the
enforcement.
entire law enforcement,
Faith community.
Oh, and man, that's a big one. And you know, it's interesting because we will be working with Bishop Derek McCrae and also Pernell Bush out of Seminole County. But one of the things that's often said, and by the way, can't do all this without mentioning Pastor Richard King, my father-in-law.
Absolutely.
He will tell you in a thousandth of a second. When you're up, when you've gone out into the world and you've made it big, if you come back to the church, thank you. But for those who've gone up and have fallen down, guess where the first place they go to?
There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Back to the church.
Yeah.
And so we are looking at getting those referrals from everywhere. But there is a priority list
Yeah.
that we're looking at, but we won't refuse anybody.
Right.
Right.
Young
Right.
fathers. I mean, I think that
That's
there are
another
young
Young
fathers
fathers.
that don't know how to be fathers. So I think standing them, and not only that, I think strong father, whether there's sororities, fraternities, and others that have something to give. I think they should donate their time toward this work.
Yeah.
If we're going to have workshops and things, I think living by example.
Absolutely.
And having those conversations of me, even with me saying that I'm intentional now about telling my sons, looking them in the eyes and say, I love them. Things that we've done and do and we've grown, we have to share that with young fathers.
Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely.
right,
It's
right.
more than just buying your kids jerseys
Absolutely.
and Jordans. I mean, the fatherhood is a lot more than that. And sometimes fathers sitting around having those conversations
Right.
with young fathers, I think it would be very helpful and beneficial.
You know, I just to jump in and tell a quick story. I remember, and I told you guys about Solomon when we were in Miami Beach. But one of the things I can remember most, I had a father in my life. He was there, but he wasn't as present. He probably could have been. But one of the things I used to cherish when I was a younger kid, people like Solomon and Fletcher and these older guys, they were probably in their 30s, and I was like 12, 13. They would all come to the basketball court and play basketball. But then afterwards, they would just sit around and rap and crack jokes and stuff. And I would just sit there and just look at them and gaze like,
Yeah.
wow, look at those men. They weren't fighting, they weren't drinking, they weren't doing anything. They were just sitting there talking, having fun. Then they'd go back to their families, and then they. So to your point, if we really just brought those men together just to sit down and talk, those young fathers and even some of the older fathers would just look and just say, wow, there's a model.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. And again, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So that's a very good point. So the frats and all that, come on out and just share your time and just have a breakfast and sit down and just talk. Because that would really help guys. Because
And
it helped me.
I just want to say too, to add to that, and it's in all that you're saying, it's okay for men to come out and sit and talk and share their feelings, right? Because I think that is something that has been lost, where men have been told growing up, suck it up. You know,
you're right.
you're not allowed to express your feelings. So having a platform where they can come together and everybody share their stories and realize we have so much more in common, and that it's okay to cry and it's okay to not know what to do, right? That's what the program is going to be about.
Support.
Yeah.
You said I see it as support, empower, encourage, and celebrate.
Exactly.
And because like even in the conversation that you and I, the three of us have as black men, there are things those conversations that I take away with.
Yeah.
Those conversations, they're things. Rod, God bless his soul. I'm his daughter's godfather. God knew not to give me any girl. I would be in jail. I just knew I couldn't raise girls. They could never date. They could never. So when Rod's daughter started dating, his daughter started dating, I had to talk him off the ledge. Hey, that's life. That's what life is. She's not going to get married. She just want to go to the movie.
But it's important what Dr. Nelson is saying. I mean, he actually literally talked me off the ledge. And from the perspective of having somebody in your sphere that you trust and you know they're not going to lead you wrong.
Right.
That helped me because I think about it in retrospect that had I gone off the top, that would have actually impacted my daughter for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And I'm on the phone with him, and it's happening in real time.
That's right.
And he's like, hey man, come on, chill. Don't do it. But this initiative also is going to be doing some things because Dr. Nelson does a lot of training on de-escalation.
Yeah.
But something that's a hidden factor that we often don't talk about, we have men that have obligations to their children. You mentioned it earlier, and one of the obligations that anybody can give of themselves that don't cost anything is their time.
Yeah.
But man, there's so many issues and pressures, and you're looking at social media. There's so much going on right now, particularly, and this Responsible Fatherhood Initiative is across the board. Everybody, white, black, blue, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But think about these communities that there is a high degree of post-traumatic stress disorder that you see violence in your community every day.
Yeah.
And now we want to have a conversation with you about being a responsible father.
That's true. That's a good one. That's a good one.
And we got to get a license. We got to get training to drive these one-ton vehicles that can kill somebody. But our most precious cargo are our children.
That's right.
And there's not a playbook that comes with that.
That's right. That's right.
That's
That's
good.
right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's a good one.
You mentioned it when you said you had someone to turn to talk you off the ledge.
Right. Right.
I want you to think about how many guys, seriously, don't have that.
You're right.
That's a good one.
You know, when we have our rap sessions on Saturdays, and I was telling you, a couple guys go now a group of 25, 30 guys, they all had something in common. They all were in need. and they all were able to come someplace and had someone to talk to. Not a
Yeah.
lot of guys, and unfortunately, because we are guys and we were taught differently,
That's right. That's right.
we don't do that. But that right there
Oh,
is what this is the
yeah.
father,
Yes,
responsible
that's
father.
what it's
That's
about.
I could call
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Bell and say, man, listen, I'm going through something. It ain't
Yeah.
my daughter's not dating. I'm just going through something.
Right,
Man. Can
right.
I bend your ear
Yeah,
for a minute?
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I never would have thought during the christening of my daughters when Randy's holding them, you know, and looking at her there, and then fast forward 16 years, and then I'm on the phone with him. Hey man,
Yeah,
hey, hey, it's going down. And all you have to do is go back to the Bad Boys movie with Will Smith
Yeah.
and Martin
Martin
Lawrence.
Martin, yeah.
And that's all you need to watch is that segment with Will Smith at the front door, strapped, with this young fella coming to visit his goddaughter. You know?
Yeah.
I was saying, Doc,
Yeah.
this ain't right.
I was like, man, she's
Yeah.
not getting married. It's just a movie, man. It's just a movie.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
the fact that, you know, this is what this initiative is all about. And I'd be remiss, and I want to make sure I say this, and audience, please listen to me carefully. This initiative has been supported, and this initiative, and I give God the glory first and foremost, but I got to recognize Representative David Smith and Senator Dennis Baxley for going the extra mile to make sure that this came to fruition. And now, you know, at the end of the day, and Dr. Nelson and Kenny, we talk about statistics, but we talk about getting results, and Randy is on me all the time. At the end of the day, it's not about the inputs and outputs, it's about the outcomes.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Anybody better off?
Is anybody better off?
Is anyone
it.
better off? We provide these services.
So, Mrs. Smith, I got to pivot and come at you because I want to learn all that I can. You know, the fellas, we gonna always have our conversation. And you brought up something that I think is really important. Growing up, you know, even though I was raised by a single parent, in the atmosphere in my community, it was always as you got older and came into this manhood thing, it was all suck it up. Don't let nobody see you weak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with that being the tool that you saw, except for I had my Uncle Leroy, who, excuse the expression, will whip your behind. He executed immediate punishment. So me and my brothers knew you didn't do that again.
That's right. That's right.
But how do we get into this spirit that we can actually have, and you mentioned already fraternities and things of nature, I think we gotta have to work hard at it.
Yeah.
But how do we create this atmosphere so that men know it's all right to come into this circle and have a conversation and
Be vulnerable.
know that, be vulnerable. Know that it's a safe place to have conversations. How do I become that responsible father that I want to be?
That, you know, again, and you guys talked about it. I think we have to model it. I think men have to feel safe, safe to be men,
Yep.
safe to know that if I break down in front of another man, I'm not going to be called all
That's
sorts of
important.
names. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They have to feel safe, and I think once they're able to see and experience something different, because again, we talked about experience, right? It's something they've experienced their whole life. It's what they saw. So now we got to teach them to experience something different. You know,
If I could chime in,
Yes,
what
absolutely.
you're saying is we have to define fatherhood.
right?
Because what
Right.
we're saying here is that the stereotypes. You can't
Yeah.
cry. You can't be vulnerable. You can't be a punk on the block.
Right.
You can't do anything of these things.
Yeah.
But I think if we were to look at those men we most admired, they were the total opposite of that.
Yeah.
They weren't out there walking around, you know, pushing people, bullying people. This, that. These were the guys who would sit you down and be like, hey man,
Yeah.
it's okay if you hurt.
Yeah.
It's okay to cry. You know, those are the guys that was Solomon.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
you know, he wasn't
Right.
he was a big man, but I never saw Solomon raise his voice.
Right.
But I was like, that's who I want to be.
Right.
This dude was the biggest, baddest, and never raised his voice. He was always,
Yeah.
hey, chill
Yeah.
out, guys.
Yeah.
Relax.
Yeah.
So we got to redefine what that looks like
Right.
because unfortunately, our media inputs have made us believe that being
Yeah.
a man is something that is totally not.
That's right.
That's really what it is.
And the other part of that is men men out in the homes. So
Yep.
the absent father.
Mhm.
So who defined for these young men what it is to be a father?
That's
Yeah.
it.
So that they're making it up on their own or what they see in other places.
That's right.
That's
So
right.
that, I think that's another reason why we have to be because I've grown as a father. A lot of watching my dad and all the positive things that I saw in my dad, but also watching and seeing and that times are different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, there's sometimes you need, and that's what I like about having my dad. There were times that you had to stand up and be a man.
That's right.
And there are times a mother is loving and nurturing, but knowing which is which.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
now I think young men that don't have their father, it's always this time.
You're right. You're
Right.
right.
That's
So,
right.
and now that it was like that when we were growing up, it's this time.
Now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're killing
Yeah. Yeah.
the homicide rate for black males, and
Yeah.
it's easy to kill somebody that you don't know and don't see as human beings.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
See,
right.
see that
That's right.
a lot of our young men, they're not afraid to die, and therefore they're not afraid to kill.
Right.
So
Right.
the-
Well, but there's a question. I mean,
Yeah.
why are they not afraid to die?
But think about it. 1/3 of black male, 2/3 of black males in Florida are not able to read at the 3rd grade level. The graduation rate, the unemployment, the death. If you look at a black male's life in America, lifespan,
Yeah.
some of them have reason not to.
You're right.
Just
but
hopeless.
Yeah.
But Kitty hits on something that I think we've all heard this conversation before. It's that lacking of having that family unit.
That too.
It's that, and just think about it. When you talk about, and I'm not an expert on gangs and things of nature, but one of the number one reasons
Oh,
that
yeah.
young people join
Gangs,
gangs
yeah.
is to have
A
a
sense of
family.
belonging,
It's about
absolutely.
So
That's
think
exactly
about
right.
the absence of the
Absolutely.
father. And Chief Brown, or former Chief Brown,
Yeah.
out of Dallas, Texas, when he was eulogizing 2 of his officers who were killed in the line of duty, when he got up and said, law enforcement is being asked to do too much and to beat everything to everybody. He talked about it. If you see stray dogs roaming the community, the community won't call animal control,
Call the
they
police.
call the police. But here's what he brought up that really hits this point home that we're talking about. He said when you look at certain communities that 75% of the head of the household is a black female. And he says, then you wonder, how is it that those school resource officers in that school are having as much contact with the administration behind behavior?
Right. Right.
Man, I think again, Dr. Nelson, going back to something that this is going to be heart work, not hard work.
Yeah.
It is
And
definitely.
we got to figure out how do we get across to men.
Right.
Yeah.
With all these different influences that
Right.
we didn't have to
Didn't have.
experience.
Social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah, we didn't have to do that.
We didn't have to deal with that. And when
No.
you think about all the things and all the influences
Yes.
now,
Yeah.
and it becomes difficult. And that's why we really try to say, how do we create that experience? Like the story you told about the gentleman that you and Ernie Sims saw.
Yeah.
It was the experience. You created a new experience. He looked up and he said, there's
Yeah.
a man.
Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
looked like.
Yeah.
That's what it looked
Yeah.
like.
That's what it
looked like.
And that's it's tough, but it's hard work. And you just
Absolutely.
it's one we change one father at a time.
Yeah, but that's a toll to bear though, to leave those facilities. Like I said, it brought back to me the times I was going around when I left with Ernie a month ago. The fact that young boy is like, what about when I get out?
Yeah, who's it going to turn to?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
So it made me feel like, Randy, this is good, but this young man's gonna get out. What? And the sense of that, damn, there's nothing I can do. And when I get home, I see that same boy and my son. I'm looking at and it bring it right back to me again, man. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Every time we start this show, it winds down real fast, but before we get to the end, I have to do this. Everybody's gonna be wondering, and I'm appreciative and blessed that we have been able to partner with GraceMart. Can you tell folks what GraceMart services are so they can contact you, no matter where they see this program at around the country? Tell them about GraceMart.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
So Gracemart now is a collection of companies that really looks to strengthen communities of color, build stronger, more resilient communities of color. And we do that through really 4 platforms. One, Fatherhood, youth programming, digital literacy. FYI, 97 million jobs are going to be created by AI, $15 trillion. Not billion, not million, $1 trillion by 2030. And then we also have small business empowerment. So we believe that we need to build minority-owned businesses so that we create jobs for the generation coming up. So you can reach us at www.gracemart.org. That's www.gracemart.org. And we'd love to sit down and talk to you, help you wherever we can.
Hey, well, I got to say again, thank you. And, met you two through my good friend, Dr. Nelson, and boy, we've been lockstep ever since.
Oh, yeah.
And I met him doing work in Charlotte. So that's another thing. I think God put people in places for a reason.
Absolutely.
So I'm all the way in Charlotte doing community engagement
Yeah.
work with law enforcement. Meet Kenny, and next thing I know, we're in Miami. But that's God's work, because this work
Absolutely.
requires us.
You're right.
It requires us
Yeah.
to work together.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You don't have the ego. What we all have in common is we want to help.
That's it.
We
That
wanna
has to be
help.
Common goal. Yeah.
For those of you who are watching the sit down takes place every Monday from 6 to 6:45. We're bringing you the caliber of individuals such as the ones you see on your screen. If you want to get in contact with the Smiths, and it sounds like a movie I'll take with one of those action movies.
Mr. Smith.
Yes, indeed. You can contact 407-494-2406. We'll give you their contact information. And a lot of you are already familiar with Dr. Nelson, 21st century research and evaluation. Dr. Nelson is no longer just in the United States. Dr. Nelson presented in Barcelona, Spain. So now he's international. So that price just went up. Hey, keep giving us the discount.
That's right.
Please tune in every Monday from 6 to 6:45. We're going to bring you the best and the brightest. We appreciate you sharing your time with us. Tune in at the 7 o'clock hour for Let's Talk Nation with Attorney Greg Jackson and myself. But I want to say to all of you, thank you. Look forward to our partnership. But more than anything else, looking forward to us getting results.
Amen.
All right.
Hey, tune in next week. We'll see you on the sit down. Look forward to seeing you.